minor league baseball is motherhood, apple pie, Americana, and it brings baseball to small town America. That's the image. It's in some ways mythic.
This community deserves this. This is a great community, and there will definitely be a little bit of pride on opening day from a lot of people.
I see these young children here, and those of you who have been to a ball game have witnessed that. That's part of what this is about. Part of what we did here today was to have a family entertainment venue, and that's exactly what we have.
I think the issue, again, does not have to do with baseball. The issue is what is perceived as economic development.
York's biggest challenge is poverty. York, 80% of its residents live in poverty.
We're going to die on the vine. So it's either be proactive and succeed, or be stagnant and die.
Eminent domain was never our goal with this project. Try to work with the people rather than using eminent domain was really the goal.
But it was just like a steamroller, there was no stopping it. There was no stopping it. It was so discouraging.
The idea of moving somewhere else was totally frightening to me. I've never lived anywhere other than down there. But we went from a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, attic, cellar, nice yard, to this house, which is literally 2 rooms, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a pull-down attic. Why is it fair to take a person's house to have a ball game or to even put a restaurant in? Why is that fair? Why should you have to leave your house?
The City of York is one of the smallest and most historic cities in Pennsylvania. It's 5.2 square miles, a little over 40,000 people, and growing, but also home to the adoption of the Articles of Confederation, the precursor to the United States Constitution, and also the home of a mighty industrial history and tremendous opportunities for heritage and cultural tourism.
I always go back and forth between whether York is a big, small town or a small, big city. And I think I come down in saying it's a small, big city. And by that I mean that it has the complexity of incomes and race and crime and corporate headquarters and sort of all of the elements that you would find in a big city, and is sort of a microcosm of that.
I can tell you that the Metro York region now has in excess of 100,000 people, and it really is part of the second fastest growing area in the entire Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
York is a huge metropolitan area. York City in itself is kind of the heart of it all. It's the center. It's the crux. It's the crossroads. It's where it all started. You know, the York wasn't first laid out in the cornfields. It's there now, but this is the heart. This is the history.
I have been one of those people that in the 5 years I've been here, I've just been drawn in, and I couldn't help but care about it. And there are a lot of people in this community that are just like that. They care so passionately about the future of this community, and it aches them to see it perhaps not at its best, and it is not at its best at the present time.
York's biggest challenge is poverty. York, 80% of its residents live in poverty.
Poverty, property values are decaying. The city itself is decaying.
This entire city almost qualifies as a sub-poverty level. Almost the entire city.
Actually, any city in Pennsylvania for the last 50 years, for the most part, has encouraged a population decline, a white flight, a middle-class flight to the suburbs. And what that has done, it's created a disproportionate concentration of poverty in our urban cores, whether it's Philadelphia, the largest city in Pennsylvania, or cities that are even smaller than York.
This is a Pennsylvania problem. It's not a York problem.
You know, concentrated urban poverty is a national problem and an intensifying problem nationally.
Some businesses, taking advantage of an increasingly mobile labor force, are moving to the low-rent outskirts. And so are families which can afford houses in the country. The trend is away from the congested center.
By the time the industrial age came in, most of the population in America lived in cities. Cities were the core. Cities were the central part of our communities. And they were that way until the 50s. The 50s, the whole social dynamic change and the public policy dynamic change, where they put everything against cities and made all the benefits to suburban areas. You look at the total amount of money that they invested in the interstate road system and the road system overall, the money that they invested in taking away farmlands and putting in sewers and building these huge megalopolis schools out there, the whole aspect of suburban life, and that you can tear apart those areas, and then the whole aspect of having tax-exempt properties within cities, and putting all the public housing projects in cities rather than mixing them, having them mixed throughout a suburban and a rural area. And then you look at the aspect of why our city's dying. Well, they're dying because the public policy decisions we've made has put a knife through their hearts, and people they look at the problems that they push into the cities, and they don't want to deal with it.
I think there's a spirit of turnaround. Of course, I would tell you that. I'm the mayor. I've been the mayor for 6 years, and I can tell you what I have seen. There are a whole group of people, young professionals, and even citizens that have lived in this community all their lives, that are working together in a whole new way to help reinvigorate and revitalize this old city.
There's growth, and there's people are starting to notice York a little bit more and realize that it's where they might want to be too.
And that's why we're so passionate about our work here, because this isn't just a city issue. This is a county and a regional issue.
We've had more projects, we've had more development. We're now, within the last 6 years, we've now seen more than $300 million of new development in the city of York.
Obviously, there's been some other big projects in York recently. Susquehanna Commerce Center really changed the landscape there, brought some jobs into the city.
From the YWCA's led Community Renaissance Project on the east end of town, where 14 blocks of city neighborhoods are being revitalized, including new infrastructure, new homes. You go across the street from the stadium to the west, and we have developing the largest economic development project in the history of York, which is now up to a $50 million project. It includes the extension of the York County Heritage Rail Trail, and the rail trail will be the front yard of approximately 100 to 120 townhomes, brand new townhomes that will be developed in this now underutilized, old and largely vacant industrial area of the city.
We're not going to be an organization that sits on the sidelines and says, gosh, I wish things were better. We're going to join all these other people that are stepping up in the community, say, gosh, this is our community. We're going to make our community great because nobody else is going to make it great for us. We better make it great ourselves.
It's come a long way, and we know that we're really, with some of our major projects now online, we know we're on the cusp of something even greater for the future of this community.
Baseball has been part of York, I would eventually say, since baseball came into being. They've always had baseball teams throughout most of the various communities in York County, including the city. We eventually had professional baseball with the York White Roses. And as a kid, I used to sit on the wall or in a tree at around Memorial Park, Memorial Stadium, watching the White Roses play ball. I remember as a kid seeing Willie Mays play in that particular stadium.
York was known as the softball capital of the world for a long time. We've had many great softball leagues and softball championships played here, but York's always had a sports lean to it. It's always been a baseball community, and so baseball at a larger level was always something we had talked about but never had the opportunity. The stadium is an interesting story in York's history, and I expect someday there'll be a book written just about that and how it developed. The stadium took 10 years from the point of the former mayor saying this is an idea that might be something we should pursue in our community to actually having the stadium completed and our first game being played in June of this year, June of 2007. It's been a long and windy road, no question, in order to make the project a reality.
After an introduction like that, it's awfully difficult to continue. Linda was correct, I was a skeptic, but not any longer.
I thought it was, possibly a good idea. I had to be sold on it.
It was by no means an easy sell here. I think it had nothing to do with baseball and a lot to do with sort of larger non-sports, non-baseball related issues.
For example, we met with a consultant from California who told us that he had interviewed folks, and in his survey he found that I think it was more than 80% of the people in the community, didn't want to say the community countywide, did not want to see a baseball stadium built here.
That's what I do. I am against this thing. I had the mayor face to face on my front porch 2 weeks ago with Chester Street. He asked me if I favored this thing. I said no. He said, what if it's paid for? I said no. It's a loser. It's a loser. It's a loser.
Well, you are talking about projects that now start at the $20, $30 million mark and go up from there for minor league stadiums. The types of municipalities that we're talking about have perhaps been in economic decline over the years, and so they simply cannot afford this.
Develop into the George Street corridor to tie into that.
So what's going to happen is your taxes are going to go up.
The numbers just don't work out well. If the stadium was a standalone business, even if you said it had tertiary, third level benefits to the community, they weren't willing to properly document it.
Also, the public, especially the media, like to ask the question, is it worth it? And that question usually is defined as, will it pay for itself? And as I've said before, no minor league stadium is likely to pay for itself in the sense that the public entity will get a dollar-for-dollar return on its investment.
What? You mean 80% of people don't want a baseball stadium? He didn't give me his response as to what he would do, but we got a baseball stadium. 80% of your community don't want a baseball stadium, but those who have the power and the money said, you're going to get a baseball stadium, so this is what's going to happen. And this is how it works.
One of the most popular questions I still get asked is, how much is the stadium costing me? People are still, how much are my taxes going to go up because of the stadium? Well, the answer is zero. You know, and if things go well, your taxes could actually go down because of the stadium. Completely opposite of any other stadium anywhere in the nation.
It was funny, I was at the ballpark last night and talking to some people about this, and I said, yeah, you know, you realize this building has no debt, no debt. And this person looked at me shocked and said, it's probably the only sports facility in the country built in the last 5 years that has no debt. And that may actually be true. Now, there's people who invested in it, like the baseball team, who have some debt associated with that, but in terms of public borrowing and public debt, there is none. That alone is utterly remarkable.
There is no tax money. That is the secret. There is no tax money. There is not a other than the $12 million that's going in, the rest of the money is coming from private investors.
The city of York and the county of York have not put one dime of taxpayer dollars into this stadium in a $30 million plus project in our downtown.
You know, thanks to people like me who raised enough hell, it didn't end up being county money or city money. It's a big chunk of state money, which every taxpayer in the state paid for. But at least locally, because we fought it so hard, we didn't end up having our local tax money go into it.
The State Redevelopment Assistance Capital Program, which is called RACP as a shorthand, is a kind of a carrot approach to local municipalities. And what it basically says is the governor, whether it's a Republican or Democratic governor, will say, hey, I'd like to put in a capital line item for a certain amount. And in this case, for baseball, it's $13.5 million. Now what that means is you have to have a local match.
This is a unique project. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania funded $13.5 million. The baseball team itself provided funding through their agreement, their lease for 20 years.
Additional funding, and this is, by the way, a $32.5 million project. The additional funding has been committed by private contributors that have pledged up to $9 million.
I don't know personally what the final price tag was or will be, and exactly what the financial arrangement is with those people on the kind of Better York civic side who contributed, but it was very, very, very significant.
From the beginning, you know, in addition to large business owners who were willing to finance things, from the very beginning, there was no question that certain contractors would be involved. They always were. There was never any doubt. They always knew who would have the contracts.
The way it applies, not just to baseball stadium, any project that's being done. If people are able to set things up in such a way that they can manipulate government offices, government officials, and get things done, then they circumvent the true purpose or responsibility of the public official to do what they're supposed to be doing. The architecture predatory missile influence gave the kind of details on how the interrelationships of individuals can influence how projects and activities are approved that use government funding or could impact government or impact your taxes.
You could also characterize it a different way, which is to say it's not a conflict of interest, it's a confluence of interest among a lot of people who care passionately about their community, who could find a lot easier ways to make money and a lot of other places to, frankly, give away their money if they wanted to do so, if they didn't care so much about their community.
I would ask the other question, where would you be if you didn't have public-private partnerships? Almost any significant redevelopment project that you see in this city, whether it's the Susquehanna Commerce Center, the Greenway Tech Center on the south side of the city, the baseball stadium, if you don't have private partners, how does it get built?
I sort of scratch my head and say, wait a minute, if it takes 12 years to build a ballpark, it's a pretty incompetent conspiracy, right? I mean, if you think about it.
When the project finally became a reality, the task forces that were formed started the process in motion. And as I mentioned, the site task force that the mayor had appointed ultimately evaluated 15 sites in the city and narrowed those sites down to 4 sites.
When they began to talk about baseball, we met and had a news conference at Memorial Park, at the stadium in Memorial Park. And at that particular time, they talked about refurbishing the stadium and et cetera. It was my suggestion that if we're going to do baseball, that we refurbish the park and use that as a professional baseball stadium.
Because that was land that the city already owned, where baseball had been played in the past.
Some businessmen brought up the aspect of, you know, it would be far better if we did this to redevelop the downtown, and they looked at what area that we call the Northwest Triangle. That would be a more proper area because it's not that well developed. It's an underutilized area. There are some businesses there.
And evidently, the word got out. There was other folks who were interested in developing sort of a community in that area of housing and small business shops and et cetera along the creek.
This is the Northwest Triangle project, which is the second stage of large-scale redevelopment that we plan for the downtown. It includes up to 125 market-rate townhouses, 2 to 3 stories, and also 20 condominiums.
The same people that were involved, I guess, in the development of the Suscom Center, which is the same people that have the money that are backing all the deals that happen in York, decided we can do more with this Northwest Triangle than a baseball stadium.
So they began to look on the other side of George Street in the R Street area. And the word went out that if it can be developed over there, okay. If not, bring it back over here, and we want it on the Northwest Triangle's slide.
Well, I think if you go back to the early 90s, even late 80s, you had an explosion of new minor league stadiums. And in many cases, those stadiums were quite successful. They were very popular with fans. The industry continued to build new stadiums in cities across the country.
The governor himself wanted to establish a competitive series of baseball cities in Pennsylvania. And people had come to the mindset that developing stadiums as venues for baseball and other entertainment outlets, that it would create an economic impetus for the communities that they're in.
It was originally Governor Ridge who set forward state dollars to help communities build stadiums, including larger cities like Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. A lot of people forget that that was the original purpose.
Well, there's always a little bit of Me Tooism in the economic development field. I mean, once something is a proven success in one community, it tends to get replicated. Every community wants things like stadiums and convention centers and arenas, and so when the opportunity presents itself, they're likely to take advantage of it. So it probably has more to do with the opportunity presenting itself because of larger circumstances, and then both Governor Ridge and Governor Rendell sort of being enthusiastic participants in approving projects in communities.
The stadiums are not going to pay for themselves on a dollar per dollar basis, but they may be central to a community's development plan. So what is the function, or what is the purpose of the stadium? That's the key question.
We wanted to do it for the right reason. We wanted it to become one of the first pieces of the puzzle to fit into place for economic and community development. We wanted it to benefit the citizens of York. We wanted it to be a focal point.
This has really never, in our perspective, never been about baseball per se. It's been about economic development and creating a community asset here. And it's our belief that the stadium can become that catalyst that anchor, that draw.
This $50 million Northwest Triangle would not become a reality without the stadium. This $10 million mixed-use residential and commercial project across the street would not become a reality. It was the first domino to fall into place.
If York's going to come back and attract people back into the city, and you've got to really build the quality of life in it, and that's where the aspect of a stadium comes in. You've got to have a resource that draws people in, makes it a core where people can meet, they can identify with something, and it's really establishes like a community foundation.
You know, the battle for the economic future is as much about attracting high quality people to live and work in a community as it is lower taxes, as it is roads, water, sewer. And so I think if communities like York hope to continue to prosper economically, you have to continue to put things into the mix.
And quality of life is going to be critical to our sustainability in the future. And if we don't enhance the livability of this community through efforts like development of a stadium and other entertainment opportunities, other things that are going to attract residents and investment into our urban core, we're gonna die on the vine. So it's either be proactive and succeed, or be stagnant and die.
When we look at the stadium and what effect it might have on economic development, I have to ask myself, economic development for whom? Who's going to benefit from this?
Who is benefiting from this economic development but those who were the movers and shakers, or the players who brought the idea and forcing baseball on to the people of York. It's those that want, and those who have, they get.
There is no real economic development beyond the construction phase. Once the construction phase is completed, that is the end of the economic benefit. And even that did not extend to the poorer residents of the city because they didn't get any of the jobs.
We talk about economic development, but I'm talking about direct dollars up front, jobs, supplies, materials. If this baseball stadium is built here in York, Pennsylvania, will it patronize York, Pennsylvania? That is, not just after the stadium's up where we get these low-income jobs, seasonal jobs, but jobs for electricians, jobs for carpenters, jobs for people supplying building materials, and jobs for people in some of these neighborhoods. It troubles me that we spent over $200 million in the area and doesn't seem like it's having a direct economic impact on the city.
Well then, wow, at least 1/10 of that will be coming back into the city, and then it will be churning and economic development will be going, but it wasn't. And so that was the other falsehood that was being perpetrated. And nobody would come out and say it, but they would say, oh, it's going to drive the economic engine. So the engine that they were talking about were, you know, minimum wage jobs, some advertising here or there for the season, and then that was it. And a handful of people would get long-term jobs. And to me, that just didn't seem like that. That's not really partnering with a municipality to make them better. That's kind of taking advantage of them. That's just my opinion, you know. And I will say that's my opinion. That's my opinion.
The baseball stadium itself has generated over 100 full-time equivalency jobs. So, you know, if you walk over there tonight, for instance, at the game, you will see a lot of city residents who work there, work the gates, work inside the premises.
The best thing the local people were getting was, as I call it, the beer and popcorn kinds of jobs, or ticket takers, et cetera.
Well, there'll be minimum wage jobs at best. There'll be minimum wage jobs given because they're seasonable and part-time. They might not even be that.
As I began to look and talk to people and look on the internet and see stories and see newspaper articles, I started calling various people, and I started getting a different picture from cities around the country. That it was not the economic wherewithal that people thought it was going to do for their communities. You know, I learned a long time ago that money talks and bullshit walks, and it's very good in this community. Very good. It's a strong message that they send you.
The majority of the affected neighborhood along the Arch Street corridor was really developed after the 1850s and through the 1870s and on into the 20th century. It was primarily a working class neighborhood dominated by railroad resources.
Actually, I learned a lot about York by looking at this neighborhood. This was the northern terminus of the Ma and Pa, or Maryland and Pennsylvania Railroad, actually stopped right at this neighborhood. This really was not only just this neighborhood, but the entire town was really a railroad town.
The homes down in that particular area were factory homes, where people come off the job and walk a block or so in their home. And they were built for the workers. There were worker bees that were down in that particular area. As I was growing up, we called it the swamp, because that's what it was. It was basically a swamp area before they started building houses on it.
It was just very much a lower middle class, or low class, lower social economic class, I guess I should say, neighborhood.
There were several properties there, some vacant, some occupied and underutilized. There were both commercial and residential properties, but it was in a neighborhood that frankly needed some help.
It was an area that was somewhat well tended by people that lived there, but it was an area that was also begging for revitalization.
That little neighborhood was like the best kept secret in town. Really cheap houses, really quiet neighborhood, reasonably safe neighborhood. They started out and they looked at Smalls Field, Northwest Triangle, I guess Memorial Field, and Arch Street. But you could tell when you went to the meetings that it was being channeled towards Arch Street. I mean, you could just see it.
Originally, we were charged with looking at 2 potential sites for an outdoor recreation complex that would include independent league baseball.
We had one priority location, which is the Arch Street site where the stadium is being built now. It had many attributes that were found to be worthy in the evaluation that was done by the task force. There was 30-some criteria that were used to evaluate this site along with those other 14 sites. And when it came right down to it, this particular site was viewed as having tremendous redevelopment potential.
The problem of that area was that there were people living there who liked their homes, liked where they lived. They were looking, a lot of them were looking to get out, maybe go somewhere else, but didn't have a lot of opportunity. So throughout the process, I said, well, we can go in that area. I would support going in that area, but we got to make sure that people are treated fairly.
My feeling is that if you can avoid destroying a solid residential neighborhood, you avoid it. I don't care what you're building.
I think you really don't understand what this little area is all about. It's a close-knit community. You don't want to dislodge businesses, but you want to take little old ladies that live here all their lives that choose to die here. And you just want to throw them out just because you want a baseball stadium. It doesn't make any sense to me when there's other places that are available for this.
It was preordained what the answer was going to be, and the committee was just like fluff. And I know people don't like to hear that, but I went to all these meetings and I listened to everything that was said, and they weren't listening.
So, but it sounds like I should write down that that's one of your concerns, to dislodge people from their homes.
You're tearing down their homes,
but
it's not the same in this area.
The question is just...
The community would like it, but they're tearing down this community's homes.
One particular time, I actually waved my hand and said, wait a minute, that's not what he said. This is what he said. And I repeated what the gentleman had said, and I looked at him, I said, now isn't that what you said? And he said, yes. And I said, now correct that, because you're not writing down what he said. I just wanted to see if you could get something clarified for me. The gentleman here in the blue sweatshirt up here was talking about his assessed value, and he said, it's nothing near what it would cost me to replace my home. And you put market value, so if he would clarify what he meant.
Thank you.
I think he meant what it would cost to buy another house.
Okay.
Versus the market value of his own house.
I don't want to write on the wall. Ask David.
Ask him. He's the one that said it.
wanted to clarify.
The frustration level was, I mean, there were times when I just felt like screaming when I'd be in these meetings, stop this. But it was just like a steamroller, there was no stopping it. There was no stopping it. It was so discouraging.
At the stadium, there were 23 properties. I think 15 of them were residential. 6 of them were owner-occupied residential. So this was mostly a rental community. Tenants that I think the oldest resident there that had been there the longest was 8 years. Everybody else had been there about a year and a half, 2 years. So this wasn't, you know, the home that was handed down from generations. This, not that that makes a difference, but just so people are aware, this was a neighborhood of people that wanted to get out, people that were here because they could afford to be here. It wasn't necessarily their childhood home.
I lived in the neighborhood for 50 years, and my friend and I here grew up together. Is she on the picture? Hi, my name's Janet. I had lived down at 367 North Duke Street most of my life. My mother bought this house, and my granddaddy lived right next door, so that made it perfect because we would visit back and forth. When my mother died, it belonged to us 3 kids, my 2 brothers and myself. But I was living there with my mother until she died, helping out with the bills, and towards the end when she got worse, helping to take care of her. And she eventually passed on, and my brothers at that point decided that I should have the house. So we went through a little bit of a settlement, and I got my granddad's house and my house. And I continued to rent out my grandfather's house like my mom did after he passed away.
We grew up together, we went to school together down on Arch Street. It's a church now, but well, it was a church, but it used to be a school. And we went to school together there.
Little one-room
schoolhouse.
Red brick schoolhouse. We went to kindergarten there together. Yeah. I grew up in my neighborhood. I lived there from when I was a little kid on. I had a lot of memories. The idea of moving somewhere else was totally frightening to me. I've never lived anywhere other than down there.
Eminent domain.
Eminent domain.
Eminent domain.
Eminent domain.
Eminent domain. Eminent domain.
Eminent domain.
Eminent domain.
Eminent domain.
Eminent domain.
Eminent domain.
Eminent domain.
Eminent domain.
And of course, eminent domain became a buzzword not just in local governments across the country, but certainly it became a buzzword among property owners right here in York when the stadium project was moving forward.
Eminent domain is, it's really a tool. It's a process for a public body to acquire property for a public purpose.
I think the overall opinion of eminent domain and its maybe being a bad thing in the general American public eye is probably right on.
I think in general, we all have that kind of schizophrenia, including government representatives such as myself. No one wants to use eminent domain. I mean, it's not something we tout or celebrate, but it is an important tool that unfortunately has to be used in some circumstances.
The obvious ones are highways, sewer systems, water lines, utilities that you know, they may take a little bit of your front yard to make the road wider.
A road, a school, a courthouse, something like that. And if that's necessary for your community, you don't feel quite so bad about giving up your property if it's necessary.
I was told that when you owned your house, they couldn't take it from you for a profit, to put something in that was going to be profitable, like the ball team. I always thought that was something they couldn't do.
But they actually have a specific provision in the law that says that they can use eminent domain for sports facilities, a stadium for a professional football team, baseball team, anything like that, which I think is just outrageous because it's not a public purpose.
There was a project up in Connecticut, I think if I remember correctly, where the Supreme Court decision came down that local government can take private property, redevelop it, give it to another, to take it away from one owner and then redevelop it for another.
A major ruling by the Supreme Court on property rights. A split court ruled 5-4 Thursday that cities may seize and demolish private homes, even in non-blighted areas, to make way for shopping malls and other private development.
That this has awakened a firestorm of controversy in the United States.
There's no doubt that the opinion is going to send a strong signal that eminent domain, when applied properly, is a useful economic development tool.
Neighborhoods can be taken for lifestyle centers.
That enhancing employment and tax revenue in a poor municipality satisfies the quote-unquote public use.
A number of cities were looking at the Supreme Court decision to see whether or not they can go forward with their development projects, have now been essentially given a green light.
The Outdoor Recreation Complex Committee, when they issued their final report in June of 2005, recommended that site assembly be tasked to the city's redevelopment authority so that eminent domain was available.
The properties that would be acquired, which could be through friendly negotiation or through eminent domain.
Obviously, the redevelopment authority could have came in and just filed declaration of takings on all 23 properties and you know, fought it all out in court. That never was the goal, never was the intent.
We tried to avoid every possible way we could with dealing with eminent domain. Fortunately, all but a few property owners saw that the value of their property and the offer that was laid on the table were quite different, and they went ahead and settled without any threat of eminent domain.
The people from the city were down one time talking about the houses, and it always comes to the same thing, that they're pretty sure this is going to go through. They want to do us right because some kind of squabble it was before, they didn't want to be seen as unjust. They didn't want to have to go through eminent domain. But it was always said that, you know, if things do come to a head and they do purchase the houses, if you don't agree, they're going to have to just take them by eminent domain. Remember I called you and said about, oh, if I don't sell, they'll just take the house anyway, and then I'll have to take whatever. And it's like, I don't know how we'll make do then. And we really don't want to do that because we want to keep our publicity good. But when you're told that, what are you going to do? You're going to say, oh, well, okay, I'll wait till then. The thing is, you sign this paper, we'll give you like, I think he said $2,000 down. If it don't go through, the $2,000 is yours to keep. If it does go through, it's a down payment on the house. So I thought, well, if they take them, I'm going to end up with less. At least this way, if it don't go through, I have a little bit of extra money. So I agreed to sell. And when you're making under $15,000 a year, who has a couple thousand to throw at a lawyer. It's like if you have money, yeah, you're okay. You can do all this stuff. If you don't have money, what are you going to do?
Again, we will work with all owners, with all tenants, whether residential or commercial, in a friendly, honest, respectful manner to agree on packages that are of benefit to all owners and tenants.
We tried to bring out in the meetings that the problem was the homes in that neighborhood were so undervalued that even if you were paid the fair market value of your house, it wasn't enough to buy a comparable house in another neighborhood.
So if a person over there got $35,000 or $40,000 for the house, wow, they would be happy. But when they went to go get another house anywhere else in the city, it would be hard pressed to find a $35,000 or $40,000 house.
This is the lowest valued neighborhood in the city. And people here who would be displaced will not get enough money using the state law. All the state's going to give you is the value of the property.
I guess I wasn't the smartest person on the block. I didn't know really how to work that. So they offered me more than I thought they were offered, because I really thought all we were going to get was that appraised value. At the time, I was thinking, well, this ain't really too bad of a price. So, matter of fact, I was feeling kind of good when they left, thinking, wow. What petrified me was when I started looking on the internet for houses. That's when I started to get really worried. I mean, you can't get much out there for under $50,000. You really can't. And when you look at your mortgage, I'm in my late 50s. I have a 30-year mortgage. Do you think I want like a $400 or $500 house payment? So that's where I'm at.
Our goal from day one was to do the right thing and to follow a process that went above and beyond what the state's urban redevelopment law required.
We will follow the spirit of federal compensation and relocation standards to ensure that our offers put all owners and tenants in as good a place or better than now.
Hypothetically, your house is assessed or appraised at, say, $40,000. A comparable house is $80,000. You're going to be looking at the acquisition price, and then that money that's necessary for you to afford the higher priced house.
Right, but he doesn't have to use federal guidelines. It's all private money. Is that correct?
We don't have to under this project. That's the point. Our committee has said, even though we don't have to, it's the right thing to do.
Oh, okay.
It's the right thing to do.
We also tweaked those guidelines a little bit to the property owner's benefit.
We tried to ensure those property owners that they were going to get fair and just monetary compensation, but they would also be given a lot of flexibility on how they spent that money once they received it.
For example, a dislocated tenant under federal HUD guidelines would get the difference in rent over a 4-year period paid out in monthly installments. We gave it to them in one lump sum. By doing that, we were actually able to take 2 people that were renting property, give them enough money for a down payment for a house, and tenants became property owners.
The Redevelopment Authority and the Industrial Development Authority sat down and negotiated with a lot of people, and didn't just make an offer and say, take it or leave it. They negotiated and said, we're interested in hearing what you have to say and what's needed to make you whole, that if you want to relocate, what your costs would be to relocate, to make sure that you are properly tended to.
There were some property owners that had second and third mortgages on their house that were upside down, completely upside down on their property, owing 1.5 to 1 3/4 the amount of what their property was worth. Because we wanted to be sure that these people weren't put in a worse financial situation, we paid those off and gave them, and on top of that, gave them money for a down payment for a house.
And then we made offers that oftentimes exceeded those fair market values, sometimes as much as 180, 185% for residential property owners.
There was an elderly gentleman that needed a 1-story house because he couldn't do steps very well. We helped him find it. There was another lady that their dream was to own a house that had a picket fence, and we helped them find it. There were things like that that really makes a difference.
In this case, in this municipality, we bent over backwards to make sure that people were treated fairly.
Every single property owner that was relocated ended up in a better situation than what they were, either financially or the property that they're living in.
But we went from a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, attic, cellar, nice yard, to this house, which is literally 2 rooms, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a pull-down attic. And my daughter actually did not like her little prison house. She calls it a prison. It has no grass out front. It has macadam right to the door. It has a tall fence around it, a wire fence. And when you go out, it has a back door, but the back door leads right into the alleyway. There's absolutely no grass at all. We're gonna go down your way.
No, it's okay. You can be in the way.
Now she has a sign above her room that tore down, but she decorated the room herself with her, let me get out of your way. We're hoping to get a scholarship so she can go to college. I mean, it's like defined beauty. I was 42 when I had Chris. I never really thought I would have a little one, and the whole time I was carrying my little one, I was so worried because they said, well, she could have Down syndrome, she could have spina bifida. And the whole time through it, her daddy would tell me, you know, everything's going to be okay, Jan. Don't worry. And I'm the constant worrier. The whole time I was worrying something would happen. To me, of course, my little one was the most perfect little one there was. And to this day, I worry when she goes out. You know, it's like, oh my. And she goes, Mom, I'm 17 now. I said, you'll always be my baby. I will always worry about you. Something they don't understand. When my daughter was first born, my one friend, Nan, came down. She said, surprised me, matter of fact. She said, well, Chris was born, so we're going to plant a tree in the yard this year, and that way you'll be able to watch it grow as she grows. And the tree is now going along with my house. And my grandfather had lived right next door, and my aunts were down with him, and I remember him coming over. I remember when I was a teenager, I brought him over for a meal. I had cooked spaghetti, but I didn't have spaghetti sauce, so I put pickle relish instead in it. And he endured this meal and said it was okay. Him and my mom both ate it and said, it was okay, Jan, but next time try to wait for the sauce. I remember that. And it had to be horrible. Well, that was my daughter's father and her, and that was George McMillan, and there was our dog Patches. He was very, how do you say that, optimistic? Optimistic. The only time he worried and got upset was when I got near the end of my pregnancy. He was like, you better not go into delivery. You better not get ready to have her with me in this here alone, or I'll be running in the streets yelling for help. Please help me, somebody. He said, I don't know how to deliver a baby. I don't want to deliver a baby, so make sure there's someone here if you're going to have this baby. He used to always say Chris was his heart. He said, that was his reason. Chris's father died in the front room. And I always felt safe and protected in our house when it was there. It was kind of, I know it sounds dumb, but it was kind of like his spirit was still in the house, watching over us. And this house is so, I love this house, but it's just so, it's kind of empty. It's once you have a house and you live in it so many years, you remember back to when your mom was there and when your brothers came down and all the Christmases that you spent in the living room, you know, with people around you, people that are gone and no longer will be with you. And that part's hard. The idea of the tree in the backyard may not seem like much, but it's the idea it was planted. It was like just a little thing, and you could see it grow as my daughter grew.
Did you, at some point, look at that tree and have to say goodbye to it?
This is Crazy George. You better show up for the Rourke Revolution Games. It's important. You're gonna love this team. Crazy George signing off.
Well, it's a great day for the citizen of York, not just York City, but York County. You see the amount of people came and so excited about this stadium. It will change the city of York for the best. I really do.
I'm excited.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So I'm excited. I'm really excited to see them.
I'm really excited to see the stadium being built and baseball coming back, because it's been a long time since we had organized ball here.
Be out, there you go. Be out to the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care if I never get back, so let's root for the home team. If they don't win, it's a shame. 'Cause it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game. Congratulations.
I was just trying to picture where my house was at this thing.
I forget myself.
Yeah, yeah. Hello. I used to live right over here. So about right here is where the driveway was to Duke Street. When you say, Chris, about right here?
It's awful, and it's exactly what I thought was going to happen to people, and I'm sure she's not the only one.
Obviously, every one of those residents paid a price that we're not going to be able to totally cover. And some of that, you know, that loss, you're going to have. And I think that's part of what she's also feeling, is that loss of history, the connection. And that's the thing when you do these projects, when you try to do the overall community projects to improve an area, you're never really going to be able, when you try to make people whole economically, you're never going to be able to deal with that.
And she gave her all so that people could have skyboxes at the ball stadium. That's sad. That's really sad.
Well, it looks okay, but it don't look anything like home. It looks foreign, completely foreign. You can never, when you have a house and someone moves on, you can still picture them like in that corner or doing something, and that's all gone. You have it, but when you go in there, you have no room to go into that kind of refreshes the good memories, like the gatherings in my family. They're all gone now, and the memories are just behind.
I think it was unfair. I think it was oppressive. These people were intimidated by representatives of the government and various agencies to give up their rights and their property without adequate protection. I consider it un-American myself.
A case of steamrolling? Absolutely not. No matter what you do, you're going to have at least one person who say, well, I'm not entirely satisfied, things could have gone a little bit better. And again, I can't say that, is she as whole? I mean, we wanted to try to keep people as whole as possible. But the important words there, as whole as possible. I'm not sure what else we could have done.
Your elite few will go to the ball stadium, they'll enjoy it because they have, they're the elite.
Well, no, Steve, I'll have to disagree with you. It's only elite if you want it to be. I mean, the stadium is accessible to everybody.
The city's going to change. The dynamic of the city is going to change, along with the fact that there's going to be 5,000 people downtown on a regular basis now.
Right.
And I don't disagree with him in that regard. We all have some learning to do.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen,
This is the community's stadium, and we want everybody in this community to embrace it as theirs.
When you see this facility and walk through the facility, you can really get that sense that, this is something we all did as a community to help revitalize our city. I don't think we should underestimate the power that has.
The city will have this for 30 to 50 years. We'll have a stadium in downtown 2-3 blocks from the square, but they're not having to pay for it. York's kind of getting a gift here, and it's an important thing that people overlook.
It is this kind of psychological connection to the city and its downtown for the entire community, that it can increase sort of long-term my stake in the outcome of the city and my positive feeling about the downtown.
It's money. You know, the bottom line is the dollars and not the quality of life. And they will tell you, and the mayor will tell you, that this baseball stadium improves the quality of life for the people of the city. Hogwash.
Because when you invest in people, people make new and different things. We make new technology. We make new industries. We make new things that didn't exist before. You build a building, it's always going to be a building. They built a stadium, it's always going to be a stadium.
The playground for those who live in the suburbs, who have the money, can afford to do it, are going to come into town. The stadium was developed as the rich man's playground.
We wanted to do it for the right reason. We wanted it.
We're gonna die on the vine.
You mean 80% of people don't want a baseball
I have to ask myself, economic development.
12 years
A boom.
It's a pretty incompetent conspiracy, right?
No one wants to use eminent domain. It's not necessary.
Ended up in a better situation than what they were, either financially.
I'm not sure what else we could have done.
But there was so much love in that house.